Someone just wrote, could you check the webinar link? It directs me to 23.com.
Yeah.
How the hell do we fix this?
C'est une bonne question.
I think we I don't know. I don't have the credentials to do that. Maybe
Is Nils still here?
Yeah.
Niels is over there.
I don't know.
Should I call 23 support?
Probably.
It's like when I click, for example, customize experience, it just takes me to the front page again.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with the links.
There's definitely something wrong with the links. But I don't think it's our fault here.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm on the phone with support. I'm waiting for it to go through.
Yeah. It is the link that's.
Is the link here that is for? Yeah, I had the same view.
I was just curious if because I was logged in, but it like the link takes you to the front page rather than. Yeah.
What happens if you leave the webinar? You try and post it again.
But it's the link that's off.
They didn't pick up and they said leave a message.
Okay, let's be proactive here. Farika, are you able to access all the people that registered?
Yeah.
Okay, send them in a quick email. Just very simple, writing that to all of them. Can be an automated, should be an automated one, where I said that look, that we are unfortunately experiencing issues with our webinar platform, and that we'll reach out as soon as possible if we are able to have the webinar today. Otherwise, we'll provide them with the next date, something like that.
Should I maybe try to call Cecilia and see if she knows anything?
I can do that as well. If you want to send out an email.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Should I call Cecilia and ask her if she can do anything?
Niels is on it.
Oh, he's talking to her?
He's calling her right now.
I'm already. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll call her. You prep the email.
Yeah.
It happens. No one's fault.
No, if anything, I think it's 23 because.
If there's something wrong with the link.
Yes, it is something wrong with the link.
But don't they have like it?
How about if you try to copy paste? You see that link there? Yeah. No, the one you have.
But what if I do like this? I try to copy that link and.
Okay, it brings you to the front page, right?
Maybe if I make it just public. Something else.
So. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to Alish, but then I'm going to put everyone that signed up in the BCC because then they can't see each other. Isn't that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. It just has to have like a main person. So that's going to be you, Alish.
That's okay, no problem. Just make it sure that we are just reaching out something is wrong, trying to fix it. If we're not able to fix today, we'll make it sure that we reschedule the webinar as soon as possible.
But can't we contact support?
Frederica tried, but no one picked
They
up.
didn't pick up and they wanted me to leave my phone number, which I did, of course. That we are trying to fix ASAP. I'll send you an email as immediately when/if we.
You don't have the page open with the chat? Okay.
Hi. As you might experience right now, the webinar that we're having is experiencing some technical issues that we're trying to fix ASAP. I'll send you an email immediately when/if we get the webinar up and running. I'm very sorry for the mix-up. We're doing everything we can.
Perfect.
Just sending that out immediately.
Please
Yes.
remember to never use the webinar tool 23andMe.
Yeah. 23andMe, that's the ancestry.
Oh,
But don't use that either. Webinar. What's the title? Webinar. Fuck up. Technical issue! Exclamation mark. Okay, it's been sent.
Wonderful. Well done.
Maybe suddenly people trying to get in because they're not getting an email. That's silly. Så vi kan ikke joine. Altså vi hoster webinaret, men vi kan ikke joine. For lige meget hvilke links vi får, så er der ikke nogen. Der er heller ikke nogen andre.
Okay, and I can see that the email went through because I got like a
Perfect.
auto reply. Yeah.
your video, if you go into video section on the left side, where you can turn on. If you go into video section on the left side bar, you can turn on video pages.
Video section down there.
You can,
Video is in the video section. The activate your contents.
but that's not the issue.
Det er fint. Jeg skal bare lige høre, om du kender problemet. Det er fint. Vi løser det. Fint. Skal nok. Fint. Can you try and leave the webinar room, enter it again, and then enter as a speaker? Or enter as host? You probably already did that, but...
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Goodbye.
Oh, you're on support already?
yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
They want us to turn on video pages.
Yeah.
But that's not the issue.
Video pages. Activate your content by enabling inbound landing pages for all your public videos and live events. Let's look that it's ticked off.
Should I try to turn that on? Then it also enables search engine optimization. Try to go to it now. No, it's still redirects.
Okay, so that was not the issue.
I just disabled that they will receive the recording after the webinar is over.
Creating some pressure.
How much have we used on promotion?
No, I don't know.
It's too late now.
Are they saying anything else?
He's offline now. I know.
That would be.
the
Oh,
word.
sorry, my work has ended. Please, we'll respond to you within 24 hours.
Perfect.
No, he
It's
didn't
just
write.
when-
Didn't write that. Didn't write that.
No.
Wait. He made a fix. Let's see if we can. I'll just mute us. But he wrote, it should work now, but cache might affect the current status of everyone that are waiting.
That sounds odd.
That means that they have to
You can
do a hard
still
refresh.
ask them all to
Oh.
refresh. Oh.
Hi. Oh, hello and welcome, everybody. First and foremost, so sorry about the issues that we've been having. We have experienced a technical issue with our webinar provider. So yeah, so sorry you had to suffer the consequences of that. So we're starting a little bit late today. So, but I still want to say welcome and happy to see that you are still checking in. If you have any colleagues that you're watching the webinar with, make sure that they get the same information. I just sent out a mass email to everyone who signed up. As I believe that you know, we are going to talk a little bit about automation and digitalization in temperature monitoring and mapping, and we've really been looking forward. So, despite the unfortunate beginning, yeah, let's try to keep this short on my end and get to the presentation. If you don't mind, we still do like to see where you're checking in from. So, if you want to write in the audience chat where you're watching from, it would be really nice. We hope to have some more people checking in while we're going the next 45 minutes or so. So yeah, and again, if you have any questions or something, please write it in the chat as well, and then I'll make sure to relay it to the guys, and either we'll take it as it goes, or we'll answer it in the Q&A. So onwards to you guys.
Thank you so much, Fredericky. Yeah, we were on tippy toes here getting everything to work,
Yeah.
but we've been really excited about this whole thing. So very happy to talk about this topic today. It's a very interesting topic for sure. But without further ado, I have with me today one of my favorite colleagues, Alex
Thank you.
here, who's head of our business development, been with us for some years now, and really a specialist in terms of talking to our customers and helping on this digital transformation journey. And I myself, I'm Jakob, and I'm the head of quality at Jupri, and I oversee everything we have to do in terms of our quality systems, calibrations, and integrations with our customers. Yeah.
Thank you for the flattering introduction, Jakob. And you are my favorite
Oh.
C-level manager. Okay. Now, my name is Alish, and yes, Jakob mentioned I'm the head of business development, and also I worked as a validation consultant. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to take you to through this journey and
Absolutely.
look what we build up together here.
Absolutely. So maybe just a few words.
Yes.
Why would we even talk about this topic
Exactly.
today?
So just briefly, who are we? What
Yeah.
is Upri, right? We are a Danish company with also offices in the States, but a global reach. We are present in more than 50 countries. And we develop kind of a one-stop solution for temperature and environmental compliance here. So what we actually created is a digital platform where we can combine mapping, monitoring, validation, so that our customers are audit ready all the times. Of course, we actually comply to the highest standards in the industry, from our kind of state of the art calibration lab to also GAM5 validation solutions here, ISO standards, etc. So that's why we are talking here and introducing you to a more digitalized solution for being compliant within the temperature and monitoring.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Alicia, you and I, we kind of discussed what are we going to talk about today, and I think what we'll talk about today is basically the condensate of the experiences that we get with our customers. We help a lot of our customers either transition from more traditional paper-based systems to digital systems within temperature monitoring and mapping. Um, so a lot of the experiences we've tried to sort of condensate and gather together, and basically we're going to talk about three things today. It's going to be very simple,
Yeah.
right? Going to talk about why does it matter, where do we see the benefits with the customers that we're helping, how do we see these implementations, and then a little bit about some of the risks and pitfalls we see in digital transformation within the companies, right?
Exactly. So let's start with
Yeah.
the first why,
Yeah.
right? So basically, one of the main reason to move towards a more digital and automated solution is risk mitigation.
Mm.
So basically, why risk mitigation? First of all, digitalizing a process such as monitoring or mapping reduces greatly the human error in this
Mm.
case, right? Besides that, also makes actually your the whole process, the work less complex, so less error prone. But that means that you're able in a single ecosystem, in a single environment, track multiple parameters, have less people hands on, so you reduce the amount also of stakeholders handling a
Mm.
single project. So here we're talking a lot of human error, but is actually also, I think, in your experience, one of the main reasons why certain activities fail.
Mm. I think you're absolutely right that a lot of what we see is related to human errors that could relatively easy be mitigated by the use of some sort of a digital transformation, or at
Mhm.
least digital system, or larger degrees of automation,
Yeah,
both within what we're going to talk about today in terms of setting the requirements and also specifying the digital landscape which your data is going to live in. But
Mhm.
I think I saw a recent study that human errors are really a large part of the deviations we see out there in larger scale, because the systems for checking, the systems for analyzing data are not automated and they're not digitalized.
exactly.
Absolutely.
But then also, always when we're talking about monitoring and mapping, we cannot talk that to components without auditing, right?
Mm,
And in a more digitalized and automated process, also the retrieval of all the documentation with the right allocation of the documentation, it's much more efficient.
mm,
So basically, you're able to have everything in one single place. Again, reducing the human error, but also kind of being very much more kind of effective in how you work.
mm,
So basically, you kind of ensure almost seamless traceability here, almost seamless paper trail, even if
mm.
it's not paper based, right?
Digital paper. Yeah.
Exactly, digital paper, but you can actually quickly see if anything is missing or if something is incorrect. As well, automation comes really handy when you have something that kind of uploads, for example, data also in real time, right?
Mm,
Here's another risk that is maybe a bit more of economical risk,
mm,
because perhaps you can lose a ton of time if you set up a mapping study and you're unaware that maybe some of the devices are malfunctioning or
mm,
that your test is failing.
mm,
Being able to track your exercises, especially mapping, in real time allows you to actually work faster,
mm.
therefore saving also quite a bit of money in this case.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think also having those digital, and that's also one of the key focuses we'll have today, that the digitalization should not only be paper on glass,
Hmm.
it should basically be a digital transformation, even in the small, for it to create value. And that's also one of our key points for today, that it is really about a digital transformation, transferring your processes to a more automatic and more digital framework. Um, but going a little bit closer in
Hmm.
on what areas do we actually want to digitalize when we're talking monitoring and mapping?
So there are various points here,
Yeah.
right? So what we want to digitalize here is from let's start from the beginning, right? A mapping study starts with a validation master plan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we are able to actually you could digitalize a whole validation master plan with all the protocols. So actually standardize like a way of operating that it's kind of how I say that you can actually replicate every time in the same way, keeping consistency across all your studies that you perform.
Mm.
So that's one point throughout the validation. Then is the real-time monitoring. And this is kind of important both for mapping but also for monitoring in itself. That means that you are able to be proactive to the issues, not reactive. So how you're able to receive actually timely alerts if you have a manual process or even a USB
Mm.
data logger place, right? That's literally it's impossible. So real-time monitoring allows you to be actually proactive to many issues that can occur both between the mapping exercise, but also the daily monitoring, and keep at the end of the day, if we are talking about monitoring, all your sensitive goods in optimal conditions. Then another kind of key element is the ease of compliance here, right? I mentioned before having access to all the necessary documentation, but also the ability of generate your documentation in a couple of clicks, right? Straight generate a report, or being able to, when you're audited, to actually immediately provide the necessary information to the auditor. Like, for example, what's the frequency of the measurements that your sensors are taking? How do you handle deviations, for example? That can be all transferred in a digital environment and be available at all the times for anyone. Actually, anyone relatively, but whenever you want, right?
Yeah.
Automation comes also very much into place, and here is especially talking about calibration processes. I think automation plays an extremely important role when, if you're able to automate the calibration process, and there are various ways that you can do somehow. Maybe you can, it can be an automation of the process itself, or an automation of kind of a service agreement. There are many different ways to automate those kind of activities, but ultimately, all of that allows you to make less errors. Ultimately, you have some cost saving, and also with a digital solution, you'll be able to have actually something very basic but very important: a remote access, right? Sometimes we're not all the time on the premises, so how we can ensure that, if anything happened, we can get notified, or we can look at it what is happening, that's only through a digital solution.
Absolutely. And I think that those points are really what we're going to talk about through today. And I think if we summarize it up in terms of the benefits of digitalization and automation of these systems, I think we can boil it down to three major points. Is basically we can harmonize and streamline our processes. That's one thing where we see a lot of our customers struggling a little bit when getting into a more digital system, is that the processes also need to be harmonized and digitalized. It doesn't matter if you have a really nice place to put all your data. If you're all inputting it manual, then it's not a true digital. Then it's just digital storage.
Yes.
And the other thing is requirements. What requirements do we set to different pieces of equipment for processes? How do we keep up with those different things? I can see I wrote processes again here, but basically both requirements and specifications, and how do we handle these different items? So moving on to the how. So how actually now comes the interesting part. How actually do we plan to look at some of these different items? And the first one is mapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with mapping, how through automation and digitalization we actually can increase precision and accuracy, right? And I mentioned before, automating the calibration process, that kind of, if you're able, and there are many, as I mentioned again, there are many ways to do that, but that just kind of put your thoughts in the process, the current process that you have right now. By automating this simple process, not simple, but complicated process that is actually has to be done on a regular basis, you can actually ensure that all your measuring points scattered across your facilities, from a fridge to a warehouse to a incubator, are always running at the best capacity as possible, so that the measurements are always precise, accurate, and traceable as well. So, with the second point, we have, of course, the historical data access, and that's actually very interesting. We'll talk a bit later on, but as you said, there is a huge distinction between digital storage and a digital solution, right? With a digital solution, obviously, you should have access to historical data, which means that every single measurement that is performed by any single device is safe into a cloud. And if you have the credential and access, you can actually enter, check, have a background check. You can create reports that are actually, you want to show something what happened 6 months ago. You can actually generate those reports on the go. Then we have, of course, I mentioned also before, the proactive issue resolution. So without a digital solution, something that connect via different kind of channels, real-time alerts are extremely hard to achieve.
Mm.
Maybe with a beeping sound or
Yeah,
a
yeah,
siren, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
very visual or with a
yeah.
sound. But otherwise, if you want to be notified without being on premises,
Mm.
the digital solution is actually the only way
Yeah.
possible.
And I think that's also one of the things we discussed is that we're seeing a trend with the industry moving way more against a proactive approach rather than a reactive
Yes,
approach, right? One thing is to get it's almost like real time alerts are a thing of the past. We're
exactly.
looking into can we be proactive in terms of knowing when an alarm will happen ahead of time. So there are still systems and still companies using more analog measurements like
Hmm.
USB data loggers, manual entries, and those forts. But in order to get a true digital transformation and an automation in terms of the alarming system, we really have to have digital systems in order to be proactive.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's impossible,
It's
basically.
impossible. It's impossible. Then obviously we improve the process planning. So as I mentioned, that's very much when we talk about mapping. We can actually, let's say that you have a digital environment where you can actually put all your protocols, standardized templates, and all that. So every time you get a new temperature control unit, or if you're big enough, you're likely opening a new whole facility, a new
Yeah.
warehouse, right?
Mm,
You can actually standardize that. Like
mm,
one fridge, if it's the same model, same maker, not it's not different than the other one. So
mm,
why you should do all the protocols? But if you are able to standardize a process, you can actually put in a digital environment and basically really retrieve it every time you need to
mm,
perform a mapping. And besides that, you can actually track the progress of the mapping. So you know a mapping process is not just is the data logger placement as well. It is checking the digital certificates. You can actually make a checkbox, a digital checkbox for all those single processes
mm.
before starting the actual exercise.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, it's a scalable solution.
Mm,
um, Scalable in our industry is actually such a buzzword, right? It's not just, at least in my mind, it's not just about you know more devices, more units. It's just kind of not just a plus one concept, but it's also kind of scalable means also that maybe your requirements change,
mm,
right? So that you have higher qualitative requirements. So having a digital solution allows you to actually increase your quality requirements basically through a subscription, for example, or
mm,
through contacting your service provider. So it's much easier to change slightly a process in a digital environment than
mm.
change completely a paper-based system in this case.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So scalability is not just matter of adding one fridge or adding one
Mm,
sensor, but it's also increasing your company quality. In this case, can be your requirements can increase in this case.
absolutely. Yeah. So basically, moving on to the next topic. Now we talk a lot about mapping,
Mapping, yeah.
but in terms of monitoring, what are some of the ways that these systems can be digitalized?
So data and
Mm,
documentation, right? Cloud-based platform allows you to actually access data, access documents based on maybe the specific location, based on specific kind of unit, etc. So it's kind of easy retrieval of all the informations that you need.
mm.
I think that's very simple way to
Yeah,
put it, but it's
yeah.
actually how it is.
Mm,
Then one thing that we are also forgetting is kind of accountability here, and it's not accountability in terms of pointing fingers, but it's also having a paper trail of users and changes in the
mm,
system, and this most often than not has to be also translated into a report. So very basic: who's changing, who's responsible of changing alert settings,
mm,
who's in charge on reacting when an alert is triggered, are they allowed to write a corrective action or notes in the system and all of that? So being able to trace all those activity, first of all, also of course gives a bit more accountability to the individual,
Mm.
but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think it's just kind of increase the transparency of the company overall.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then and that's actually the interesting part for me, like predictive maintenance. So
Mm.
with the merging of historical data, trends that you're able to track, you can actually, through various analytics, predict system failures. You
Mm.
can predict almost when, for example, a fridge or units will break down at some point, because there are some patterns, some fluctuations that are actually
Mm.
always the same when that happens. So that's optim. And then let's say when you go back in time and you're able to analyze that, you're actually able to optimize your maintenance in this case. So without having kind of a yearly fixed maintenance check on all the devices, you can actually argue that according to the historical data,
Mm.
certain units needs maybe every second year,
Mm.
for example, right?
Absolutely.
So you can optimize so many things. And basically here it's kind of very much about knowledge and
Mm.
the ability of analyze the amount of data that you get all from all those devices. It's actually almost humanly impossible for one person looking
Mm.
at spreadsheets, for example.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. um as I mentioned, that's kind of again tied to the data collection and all that, is the automation of reporting. So why you should have tons and tons of binders with daily reports and all that, if you can actually automate that every week you receive an automated report via email
Mm.
that you can put in your little digital folder in your
Yeah.
Outlook email.
And I think also one of the great cases surrounding going from a more manual system that it's not necessarily pen and paper, but we have a great success story from one of our customers where they were having a system where they would manually need to pull out data,
Mhm.
and in well, basically transition to our system. I don't think that's a that's a secret, but having the automated reporting feature, I think a light sort of dawned on me that they were actually using this to reduce manual errors, because
Mhm.
rather than them having to remember to take out data once a month or once every two
Yeah.
weeks, they would actually get their automated reporting in. And that's one of the things that we'll go in bit more into depth later on, in terms of how do you make this transition, because one of the key elements here is basically to map out what are our processes and our requirements today, and how can we transform those into a digital environment where we focus on the critical paths, like what
Mhm.
are our requirements in terms of data review and reporting and so forth, and can we digitalize those systems. So that's really one of the key elements where we see some companies missing out on some of the value
Yeah.
in terms of going towards the digital system, right?
Actually, maybe that's a good
Yeah.
question for our audience.
Yeah.
So how do you do your reporting? Actually, did we ask?
Yeah, so basically we have a question here that we would love to throw out there, which is basically how I'll just start it up here. How, to what extent you have digitalized your temperature monitoring processes. So based on this, while you answer this, I think we'll just move slightly on, and then
Yeah.
we'll take a look at the answers.
And last but not least, if a digital solution is done well, it should have a user-friendly interface. So that's maybe what is why is that important? Because intuitive dashboards, an intuitive system gives kind of an ease of accessibility to the users, which is fundamental. And now I think almost everyone has a smartphone. Everyone is
Mm.
kind of familiar with various digital tools, obviously, right? So, and in this case, kind of a manual process in itself, a process where you have to collect data,
Mm.
upload to an Excel sheet, and all that, is actually way, way, way harder
Mm.
than utilizing an interface that is actually easy to operate. So
Mm.
intuitive dashboards that provide you clear kind of actionable insights in this
Yeah.
case really allow to have, more users hands-on.
And I think that's really that's a really good point, because what we're also seeing a lot when people are trying to uh, take a process that
Mhm.
somehow has been followed and that might have been learned over the years and passed down almost through generations, and you want to digitalize it. Sometimes what we see is that the integration into more people's daily lives becomes bigger, and that also means that more people have the opportunity to report incidents, to react on the data, and
Mhm.
so forth. So for us, that's really a key feature in choosing any type of digital monitoring
Yeah.
system, is that user friendliness is often viewed as a sort of nice to have, but it's not really viewed as something that has a valuable impact on the quality
Yeah.
you deliver. But we see a lot of cases where we might have what we call line of operation, operational staff, where if they can access the data, if they get the alarms, if they have some way of reporting what they're seeing out there in the field, well, more data comes back to often a central QA unit, which might not have their daily work on the floor. And so user friendliness, not only is it becoming a sort of an industry standard, but we often advise people to look for what is user friendliness in their sort of scenarios, and
Mhm.
how does that translate into
Exactly.
to supporting the quality objectives that companies have.
And
Yeah.
one little thing that you
Mm,
can add is also kind of, hopefully, like, companies
mm,
grow. For example, we have grown like from a
yeah.
couple of people to almost 70 right now. uh, how easier is to onboard new people if you have a user
Yeah, yeah,
friendly interface,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you have to teach like a complex process
Mm,
where you need a proper training on it,
mm,
a user friendly interface kind of allows you to kind of put
mm,
have someone that is able to work and be operative
mm.
much quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some good points here. So basically, moving on, one of the other key areas where we see a digitalization of systems and also automation is in terms of reporting. And one of the key things we always help our customers in terms of figuring out is, first of all, what is your format? It can sound very tedious, but basically figuring out what kind of format, using also file system format, are you using PDFs, are you using raw data files, what is it you're looking, and setting out these requirements so that you ensure that your systems and all your other processes and all your other digital systems can accept these is truly important in terms
Mhm.
of adapting a digital system. Another key part we see about regarding reporting, and this is both for monitoring and mapping, is also set out the requirements. Having digital requirements are increasingly becoming popular in terms of ensuring that your digital system becomes a success. So what do I mean by digital requirements? We have some points later on in terms of digital calibration certificates, but also a lot more of the systems we see out there accept that you set out digital requirements. Could be something as simple as a alarm
Mm.
setting, but setting those out. Third, about approvals. This is where 21 CFR Part 11 comes into play, ensuring how do you set up a system where the different actions that you would otherwise need a signature for example, how do you set that up in terms of the reporting? Often we see companies being quite good at ensuring that changes are tracked and user access levels are controlled in terms of changes, but in terms of approvals on reportings, sometimes there's a bit of lack of the understanding that any review on a reporting, for example,
Mm.
is a 21 CFR Part 11 applicable approval, for example, or just making the reporting. And then storage. Lastly, storage, ensuring that you know what you're doing in terms of storage. So, what can be done in terms of these different sorry items? So, basically, reporting. What we often see in terms of the format is basically to have control templates for how you plan to do your reporting. That can be in terms of configuring the system so that they output the same type of reporting
Mhm.
each time, that you have an approved format for your reporting. It's much like having a template in Word and then filling this out in terms of your deviation management or whatever. But in digital systems, it's just very important to control the settings or however you like to have the format. requirements are often linked in a validation master plan. Like, right, when you're reporting on these things, you have a validation master plan which can set out the requirements in a known format, not only so that they're understandable by a human being, but also so that they're understandable by the system. And this is one of the things we often see, is that we might have a validation master file or a validation sub that defines what needs to be part of this reporting, but it's not written so that it's adaptable to the specific systems. What kind of settings? It's not all things that are uh, configurable in each system. So basically having requirements so that they can both fit a manual process and an automated process is truly important. Um, in terms of approvals, we often see that what we call the global approval system, that might be high flying to call it global, but we see especially larger organizations where one of the pitfalls is basically that they do not have they might have locally a very nice setup in terms of user access levels or user roles or whatever it might be, but having a global understanding of who can approve what is truly important. And then largely storage. How do we plan to store these systems? Where is data stored? Is it within the system? I take it out and put it on your own servers. What are your storage policies and so forth? Yeah, and then another really important thing in terms of
Deviation management.
deviation management. We all hate it. We all love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So basically, deviation management is a necessary evil. Can we call it like that? To some extent, it happens. I mean, in this case, it's applicable both to mapping and monitoring. But let's say a digital solution allows you to automate the deviation tracking. So whenever deviation happens, and all that must be registered, must be acted upon. Most likely, you need to do a corrective or preventive action afterwards. So all of that can be placed in one single spot. Maybe even connected to the exact location where that happened, right? So you have all this paper trail truly accessible and neatly collected in one single place. You can actually really work down efficiently the root cause analysis. So because you have access to historical data, you can go back in time. You can really kind of track back exactly what brought to this kind of issue. Then you can actually definitely automatically, with maybe an entry or something, move that into a report. So it's all those kind of little things that you can, the dots that you can connect very easily in a digital solution, where manually, or if you store just kind of everything in an Excel file or sheet, all those measurements, it's extremely hard to connect all those dots. Then obviously communication also here is very important. Uh, when it comes down to digital solutions and all that, allowing people to have different degrees of access or access to information, this will actually really help you with streamlining the communication and not chasing down the various departments that might be responsible, because everyone can have access, maybe limited access to the information, limited access to the data. But the whole point here is kind of streamlining the communication, give the opportunity to actually bring on board during the deviation management, the corrective actions, the necessary stakeholders to effectively solve the issue, because we're talking about solving the problem here. Then documentation, I think I covered somehow before, because you're able to actually neatly store and organize everything in a digital environment. And this allows you also, and here we go again back to historical data and all that, allows you to create a culture around of continuous improvement. If everyone is part of the processing, solving issues, and you're able to kind of increase the communication, the cross department communication, having all the documentation easy to access, that it's accessible in the specific locations. You track back all the deviation that happens. You have efficient root cause analysis that are attached to the various locations. That automatically creates a culture of continuous improvement in your company. So that means less deviation management.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also one of the key things we see in terms of going from a more traditional system to a digital system in terms of deviation management is also that companies need to adapt to what kind of information the different systems provide in terms of being able to create basically efficient root cause analysis, right?
Yes.
So if you have one system that handles all your temperature and you get a lot of data from a temperature deviation, and you couple that with another digital system, how do those integrate together and how do you report between those systems? Um, it's really one of those things that we see that a lot of companies have to think through in terms of what kind of data provides input, or what kind of input data do I have from the different processes, and how do I map those out, especially if you start giving more people access to be able to observe different things. Does the person on the floor see that a fridge door is open and closes it? How do you get that data in rather than having an open deviation with no real causes?
Yeah.
um
But it's
Good.
even further the merging of two digital solutions.
Yeah,
actually.
yes, absolutely. So one of the key things as well where we see issues today in terms of, if especially if we're talking very large organizations, is actually in terms of calibrations, and how do you handle those digitally. So one of the key elements of calibrations is basically specifying how and what type of calibrations need to be performed for either for mapping or monitoring cases. So one of the largest roots or root causes of deviations or near deviations that we see in terms of calibrations is actually that the specifications vary across the organization or varies across different departments in different countries. So having general calibration specification, it turns really important, and it is really possible with the most digital systems. Therefore, also the planning. How do you plan when to do these calibrations? Is it done in time? That is really one of the key points where we see companies transitioning from more manual processes to more automated processes. It's not only are you sure that you have the correct specifications, and you're allowed to specify those from a central QA unit rather than each individual country or department or affiliate or whatever it might be. But you're also able to plan this across the organization. And then lastly, one of the things you also see a lot of people missing is basically reviewing your calibration certificates, making sure that both the calibration that you ordered is actually the calibration you got, and that the results are within specification. So I would actually love to talk about one of the key trends that we're seeing right now, which is in terms of digital calibration certificates. So what you see on the left here is basically a depiction of a central QA unit. That this is one of the ways to implement this. But one of the benefits we're seeing is that if you're a large organization or within one of those standard industries, for example, GDP, where you have some standard configurations for how to calibrate a logger that should be used for minus 20 degree storage, for example, you can actually specify these are the requirements that this logger needs to adhere to. So there can be calibration points, uncertainties, MPEs, and so forth. And that's basically what we call a DCR, so a digital calibration request, or as we like to call it as well, a digital calibration template. Then these same configurations can be applied across your organization, saying whenever you have minus 20 degree storage, these are the calibration points you need, these are the uncertainties, this is the calibration interval, and so forth. That means that when these sub-departments, they will order calibrations through a calibration provider, much like our own. Basically, you know that you'll get the same types of calibrations across your organization. And with the implementation of digital calibration certificates, there's some great online articles on the stuff as well, and we'll be coming out with one next week here, actually. You can basically both get your calibration certificate in your PDF as you're used to, but you can also get it back in terms of a digital calibration certificate, so that you're actually able to compare whether the calibration that you ordered is actually the one that you got. So another key influence that we see is actually in terms of trend analysis. So we normally, when we implement systems with our customers, we normally look at, first of all, what is important. I think most companies are used to looking at alarm occurrences. So how many alarms have we had? But there might be other trends that are truly interested in terms of looking at your critical quality parameters. So basically, what are the items that are important for us in order to have a high level of quality and a high level of process quality? Then we often sit with our customers and do an identification of these trends, and we plan out how do we plan to measure these different, and how do we plan to report it. So some of the key trends that we would normally look for are alarm occurrences. I think, as I said before, a lot of companies out there, they trend on alarms, but it could also be stuff like the stability of the temperature. Do you have stable temperatures across longer ranges? Do you have, what is your resolution time? So not only what is the time from you observed a temperature deviation, so basically an alarm, to when you did your
When you
kappa on it.
react, kind of.
Yeah, but more, yeah, exactly, more in terms of how long time did it take you to resolve the issue,
Mhm.
because often it's I would say mechanical or human error, and a door has been opened or something has been left not turned on, or whatever it might be.
Or unit breaks down, right?
Oh, what, sorry?
A unit can break down.
A unit can break down, yeah, absolutely. So also being able to classify these different ones, absolutely. And lastly, also, what is your safety margin? This is something we see a lot of companies do, like monthly, pull out report, look at all the data, see are we trending upwards or downwards.
Mhm.
But another way to look at this is basically, what is my safety margin? Like if I have a 2 to 8 degree storage and I'm constantly at a 7 degrees, I don't have that much safety margin left. And I'm actually um, quite proud to show you this. This is our guess on what kind of parameters one could look at. We like to call it, instead of calling it risk, we basically call it performance. So that's a way of turning it from something negative to something positive. But basically looking at what are the different indicators that we have. It can be stability, it can be resolution time, it can be average temperature, it can be the number of alarms, and basically looking back in time. So this is something we will provide to everyone by July this year.
Mhm.
So if you have a Power BI integration, you can basically get this integration in, and you can look through your trends. And this is something that's only really truly possible in a digital framework.
What
Yeah.
do you see? What are the potentials of this trend analysis?
So it's a real good question. I think it's a hidden secret within the industry that um, often storage conditions are not really viewed as a process which needs process validation, but we do see some, okay, we need to identify either critical quality parameters or just quality parameters. And it seems often when we're hearing from customers that you tend to fall back and look at the number of alarms, which is an extremely it's a great method for assessing whether something has gone wrong, but it is also very reactive. So what we try to do with our customers also look at, can we identify any proactive indicators? And these are often the indicators that we look at. So basically alarm occurrences as before, but also stability, homogeneity, hot and cold spots, safety margins, or safety in terms of how far away are you from your alarm lamps. Yeah. But just in terms of one of the last points before we go to some of the pitfalls here. So one of the ways that we see projects working the best in terms of going from a more analog framework to a more digital framework is basically to start out with finding out what your processes are today.
Yeah.
So we often see this step skipped because it's like, oh, we'll get a digital or more automatic approach, so there'll be a lot of better things. But basically defining what are your processes and what do they look like today. And then secondly, first of all, going to an alignment in terms of what is the scope of this digitalization and automation. What parts are being kept in, what of our processes today can be transferred to tomorrow. Also, secondly, looking at indicators, what is important, what pieces of these processes are important to us, what is it we want to look at in order to determine that this is a success. And then lastly, looking at the data flow. what and where. So basically, what kind of data do we want to import? We might get more data with the digital system that we have in a manual processes. But what kind of data is important is truly important. Remember, you can always build up on these. And where do we store this data? Where do we store it, but also where do we plan to present it? So as a third, we often advise on planning, basically what, how, and who. How should we implement these systems? And then, of course, lastly, do and learn. So basically, just getting this rolling, getting some systems, and then following our normal PDCA cycle. Yeah, sorry for being in a bit of a rush here, but we started a bit late. So in the interest of time, I think we just might have time for just a few questions. And I can see that there's some great questions coming in here.
So Antonio
asked a great question here.
Yes.
So I
Salve
agree.
Antonio.
I agree with the idea of automating the mapping process. However, since these measurements require knowledge of regulations and standards, wouldn't customers typically prefer to have the mapping done externally by experts? So this is actually a great question, and one of the things that we see changing a lot right now. So when we talk about today, we talk about the GXP industries, and that can be from all the way down from very sort of the point of sale, transportation, and all the way up to production. We see a larger and larger amount of companies having to do temperature mapping. So that also means that there are more and more companies who do not have any prior knowledge on how to do temperature mapping. And it's no secret that in Europe we do have the capabilities world to do help our customers perform temperature mapping. But we also see a lot of cases where the complexity is so low that being able to set out a specific set of requirements for how to perform it and then let someone on the shop floor basically perform it is being adapted, because the digital tools reduce the amount of errors we see. And also, since it's so standardized, you can have a central QA unit accepting and approving the protocols and the basically the approach on how to do it. And it's just a matter of setting up a few data loggers in a fridge. And we see auditors accepting this approach widely, also really sparked by the Corona period, where there was a lot of time where we couldn't go on site. We would basically need the customer's help to do these.
Yeah, here the standardization of the processes it helps you a lot. If you're able to standardize those processes in a digital environment, then it's very much matter of replicate the same exercise, right? So following the specific steps that are already placed into a digital protocol, for example.
Absolutely. So I think we're running out of time here, but thank you so much. And if you're interested in hearing anything more about digital calibration certificates or digital system, please don't hesitate to reach out. Both Alex and Frederica and I are really welcoming your questions or comments. Otherwise, please follow us on LinkedIn, and we also do have a lot of upcoming webinars, hopefully without as many technical problems. But thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.